biologist and author. Professor Brian Ford was also there that day, and he remembers it well. Good evening to you, Professor.
Well, hello, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
An extraordinary day, isn't it?
Absolutely. What do you remember, first of all, about that day?
It's funny, I have memories back to the age of 3, and I was just 6 then. And one's memories are vignettes. One doesn't remember an entire day. One remembers, as it were, a scene, you know, a kind of a little snippet. And I vividly remember we were by the Victoria Monument outside Buckingham Palace, and I was either sitting on my father's shoulders or he perched me on the wall of the monument. And I just remember all the noise and the shouting. And as the commentator said, people chucking their hats in the air. I do remember seeing men trying to retrieve their hats. And I thought at the time, how silly to throw your hat in the air. How are you going to get it back? But the most vivid memory that I have, and what fixed it in my mind, was the change. I mean, as a little boy, I had been brought up knowing that at night you had black curtains across the windows, that if you were going to have the front door open after dark, that the lights were turned off inside so no light would spill out of the door, because everything had to be in darkness. You didn't want to give away where houses and cities and towns were for the German bombers. And of course, after VE Day, there were lights everywhere. There were lights in Piccadilly Circus. There were street lamps everywhere. The cars, which used to have their lamps off or very low at night, suddenly had headlights, and everything changed on that day. From that day on, things were bright and open and shiny, and before then they were very drab and dour and constrained. And that really was a fulcrum in life. And that change from dark, drab existence to bright and happy existence really hinged on VE Day in London. And I think that's why I remember it so well.
It's kind of become a lifetime's work for you as well, hasn't it? You've written a lot of books about the Second World War.
Well, yes, you know, I've often wondered. Several of my books have been on the Second World War, and I have sometimes, I've never said so publicly, but I have sometimes thought, I wonder whether that is why it was that I was so fixated on it. I mean, I was fascinated anyway by the fact that war is so much a better stimulus to innovation and research than peace ever is. Do you know that the Germans developed their Volksjäger, their little single-seater jet fighter, in, wait for this, in 90 days, from the first design to it having its test flight?
That is amazing, isn't it? Professor, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Thank you so much for being with us. That's Professor Brian Ford. Sorry to interrupt you.
Not
because
at all.
The First Minister, Mark Drakeford, has just started speaking, so let's have a listen to what he has to say.
The stay-at-home regulations have been in place in Wales since the end of March, and these restrictions are unprecedented.